You dudes, Orange here. The mock NFL draft in Detroit is tomorrow. Get pumped, everybody. Woo! And this is going to be my final mock draft until then. And this is kind of what I think will happen type of mock draft. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. And to start off, I did a trade. I traded up. I traded up with the Jacksonville Jaguars for their 17th pick. So I acquired this pick number 17 in the first round in exchange for pick 29, pick 205 in the sixth round, and a second round pick from 2025. And then with this, the goal with this pick was to cut in front of the Cincinnati Bengals, who had just lost Reader, their interior defensive tackle, to us, the Lions. So they're probably looking to replace that position in the draft, and the Lions are going to cut in front of them and get a defensive tackle at pick 17. And I went with Byron Murphy II, the defensive lineman from Texas, and yeah, he's top dog in terms of defensive lineman, and it's neck and neck with him and Jerzon Newton from Illinois. But the reason, and I know it doesn't seem like Byron Murphy had any sort of contact with the Lions, as far as we fans know, but we had no idea that the Lions had interviewed Jack Campbell at the combine last year, and I guess the reporters failed to catch them do that. And who's to say the same thing hasn't happened with Byron Murphy this year? And the reason it is neck and neck between him and Newton. The reason I had Murphy ahead of him, not because Byron Murphy's hand size is a 10 and a quarter, where Newton's is 9.5, so almost a whole inch farther. So it's because of the pass rush win rate and the one-on-one win rate. So Byron Murphy's pass rush win rate was 19.6%, whereas Newton's was 15.5%. So almost a 4 to 5% higher there. And then one-on-one win rate was 30.4%. If he's going one-on-one with an offensive lineman, 30.4%, whereas Newton's was 23.2%. So that's kind of what tipped the scales for me for why Byron Murphy was, a favorite of mine, as I talked about in my 11 favorites video. But yeah, I've talked about him before. He can do pretty much everything well that you would want as a, defensive tackle. And even though the Lions do have Reader, I think they're going to continue to kind of build through the defensive line and complete the defensive line, complete the trenches, and really make it a force on the defense, especially when you have a new defensive line coach, Terrell Williams, there, who has a really good reputation for working with the D-line. And it's one of the things we thought would be the Lions' strength last year, but it didn't turn out to be as good as we thought. And what lived rent-free in my head was the announcers showing Lamar Jackson putting a timer on him running around before anybody could get to him. And that right there kind of made me think, okay, so the Aquara brothers and Charles Harris, probably not the answer there. So that's going to be one of arguably the top goal of this draft, is to increase the pass rush in any way they can throughout the edges, throughout the interior defensive line, throughout all the defensive line. And Byron Murphy is the first step to that. So, all right, we don't have the second round pick anymore, but because there is a second trade that I did. And with this trade, I traded pick 61, which was in round 2, to the LA Rams, who generously gave the Lions in exchange pick 83 from the third round, pick 99 from the third round, and pick 154 from the fifth round. And I did this on PFF, and honestly, I didn't look at who the Rams drafted. I just, without forcing the trade, I attempted the trade, and it was successful on the first time. So take that for what it's worth. And anyways, that takes us down to pick 73 in the third round, where I selected my draft crush, if you have been paying attention, Cameron Kinchens, a safety from Miami, Florida. And this, I think, would be another Kirby Joseph type of player. Kirby Joseph can get clutch interceptions. Melifonwu can get clutch interceptions now after he's developed, and Kinchens, I think, would be a third type of player who is really good at ball hawking and getting those interceptions. And I think with the Lions formula that they want to go for on defense, they want to, try to get sacks, try to get tackles for losses, and try to get all around pressure on the quarterback. And if the quarterback does manage to get the ball off, then the ball is picked off, and the more time of the game goes towards Detroit's elite offense. And I think that's the formula they're going for, and they're looking for more people who can get interceptions. And that is why I love Cameron Kinchens so much here in this draft, because he can help out with that with the Lions, and we can replace CD Deuce, who went back to the Eagles, and we can that's a whole nother story there. But yeah, he had 5 interceptions this past season. He's had 11 interceptions within the last 2 seasons. He was actually a first-team All-American in 2022, and then kind of a neck injury after a scary hit like in the Texas A&M affected things last season. So he actually took down his 19.7% missed tackle rate in 2022. He decreased that down to 13.7%. So he does look like he is coachable and is willing to improve and things like that, even though the missed tackle rate is kind of alarming, because the Lions, they want people who can tackle. So that could be a detractor there, but remains to be seen. So and yeah, like I said, he's a ball hawk. And what really sold me, I watched a little bit of tape of him on YouTube, and just the way he's able to read the quarterback and then go where he needs to go in such a quicker than you would expect time. It just reminded me of Kirby Joseph when I saw him intercept Aaron Rodgers to close out that game against the Packers, Rodgers' last game, which I went to. So speaking of the Packers, I noticed on PFF that the leading team that wants to draft him is Green Bay at 13%. And I tell you here and now, Packers fans and Seahawks fans and any NFL fans of any teams, if you do anything to interfere with the Lions attempting to draft Cameron Kinchens, then I am going to go to the quick trip that you go to. I'll find the correct one. And let's just say, see you next time. So stay away from Cameron Kinchens. Anyways, pick 83 in the 3rd round. One of the ones acquired in the trade down with the Rams. I went with Jelix Hunt. I think that's how you say his name, edge rusher from Houston Christian. And this is a former safety who converted into edge rusher. And that, because safeties are really good at being able to track down the ball carrier from like all angles of the field and short distances and great distances. And I think as an edge rusher, Hunt would be really good at hunting down a mobile quarterback who attempts to run away with the ball when nothing is open. I think that could be really valuable if you're playing against a quarterback like, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes or Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud. And he could be very good in a role like that. He's got 34 3/8 arms, which is pretty good. He has a 4.64 40 time, which is pretty fast. He was a former first-team All-Southland Conference player, so take that for what it's worth. Like I said, he's explosive and he's got closing speed. He's got quick feet and a good bend to, get when engaging the offensive lineman. So he had 32 pressures last season with 8 sacks and 29 tackles for loss. And he's able to, shed blockers and track the ball carrier as well. Because, like I said, because he's a former safety. So if you're looking for value for edge rushers on day 2 or day 3, I think Hunt could be one of the best ones there. And then the 99th pick in the 3rd round, I've talked about this person in a video before. It is Brendan Rice, a wide receiver from USC. And he's got 33-inch arms. And so that's pretty good for that there. So he's a good big-bodied target, like contested catch type receiver. Although I think of him as more of a Josh Reynolds replacement type of wide receiver, but that I'll take it for what it's worth. He had 791 yards last season with 12 touchdowns. He generated 9 missed tackles that he forced, and he had a 4.3% drop rate. And yes, I do believe this is he is related to Jerry Rice. You might have heard of him, as well as that new Kansas City Chiefs receiver. So yeah, it's got a little bit of name recognition there. So I think he'll be motivated to try to do better than his brother, who's I guess has that legal issues involving the car accident right now. Like he'll you know how brothers want to be competitive with each other and try to prove how they're better than the other one in certain ways. And I think that'll motivate him to be a classy person and want to really be successful as best he can. So yeah, Brendan Rice, I think could be a good Lions wide receiver here for good value. With I think this could be the last pick in the third round. I have to go back and look, but it's right around there. And then we go down to pick 154 in the 5th round. This is the last acquired pick from the Rams trade. So Lions get a lot of trade capital on day 2 there and early day 3-ish. Lions go ahead and draft a McKinley Jackson. I almost reversed the name where I said Jackson McKinley, but it's McKinley Jackson. I double checked all of it. He's a defensive lineman from Texas A&M, and this is the 3rd defensive lineman that I've taken in this draft, and that's where I think this draft is going to go because like what I said about the defensive several of the defensive lineman core and the edge rusher core underperforming last year, except with the people who we know do good, like Aiden Hutchinson and Lee McNeil and those guys. And we talked about a lot last draft when trying to compare the likes of like Jalen Carter and the one that went to Tampa Bay, who was from Pittsburgh, and Brian Brzee, and all 3 of them had their unique strengths and weaknesses. And I think this draft is really different in terms of not a whole lot of like valuable defensive linemen who have unique sets of strengths and weaknesses. And then think of it last year, the only defensive lineman the Lions did draft was somebody who turned out to be a project and barely played in the first year. So yeah, we're really and considering the fact that in Brad Holmes' first year, he did back-to-back defensive tackles, shows how much he values drafting defensive linemen and what they do. So coming from a team that had Aaron Donald and saw what he did for them. So anyways, McKinley Jackson, he was a team captain. His pass rush win rate was 8.2%. His one-on-one pass rush win rate was 14.5%. So not as good as the top dogs, but pretty good for where he was at there. He's fast and explosive. He's got that good first step. He's got good leverage. He has a nasty spin move, and he complements that with several other pass rush moves. And he wound up with 14 pressures and 4 sacks and 15 tackles for loss. So I think really great value for assuming Jackson falls here. So at pick 5, 164, this is where I go with the kicker. And before you say you should have been in the 7th round, let me point out that last year, Jake Moody was drafted in the 3rd round, I believe, by the San Francisco 49ers. And the year before that, I believe it was the 3rd or 4th round, where Cade York, the best college kicker in that draft, got drafted by the Cleveland Browns, and he barely made it. So don't be surprised if the top 1 or 2 kickers goes way earlier than what you would think, maybe even on day 2. So I took a gamble and put the kicker here in the 5th round for that. So pick 164 in round 5, Will Reichard, kicker from Alabama. And I just mixed this up from the other kicker from Stanford from what I did in the previous video. But Reichard has played for Alabama, who has played in a lot of big games for a team that holds itself to very high standards. So That's probably makes him used to pressure as best you can. And then look at Jake Moody; he was that same kind of kicker, and he had his growing pains last season, but he's was able to make some clutch kicks in the playoffs when they needed to the most. So, but he has 12 field goals from 40 plus yards out. He's 100% from 50 plus yard field goals. He's 100% in extra points, and yeah. So, and that is if they don't sign a kicker from anywhere else. I know the Lions don't haven't really prioritized kicker in the Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes regime in the era, but this would be a really top candidate for addressing kicker if they decide to go that way. Because if they don't, then I'm starting to just kind of believe that Dan Campbell doesn't want to address the kicker, because I know he wants to be remembered for being the aggressive guy who goes for it on fourth down. So maybe he doesn't really want a good kicker at all. So always has an excuse to go for it on fourth down. And I hope that's not the case, because you want to put yourself in a position to put as much points on the board as possible, depending on the situation. So, and then, need I remind you everything that took place during the conference championship game against San Francisco? But, Will Riker, the kicker, is the pick here. That's where I had him. And I saw The Athletic had some mock drafts where the kicker went in the round 5 area too. So I'm not alone in thinking that. And then pick 201 in round 6. This is where I start to acquire U of M players. In fact, these last 2 picks are U of M players, and I figured it would be part of Detroit's part of their goal is to get Michigan players, especially since they're just off the championship, and as part of the culture, and bringing the electricity of football fanaticism to Michigan, and to Detroit and all that. So you want people who could definitely do that. So, because I don't think the Lions are going to draft JJ McCarthy, because Jared Goff has proven himself to be pretty good. Hendon Hooker could be good one day. If anybody, I don't think they'll draft a Mike Senra still, if that's how you say his name, or the slot receiver that they had, because they have Amon St. Brown, or yeah, anybody like that. So, anyways. Pick 201, round 6, Josh Wallace, cornerback from Michigan. This is also where I finally addressed cornerback, because the Lions have already done an admirable job of addressing cornerback in the off season and free agency. So, but Wallace was a team captain. He's listed as projecting to play press zone, but he can really play in all schemes, any type of scheme, man, or zone, whatever you ask of him. There, he has a lot of special teams experience, which will probably come in handy if he wants to help out there. Definitely will help out there. He's 5'11". He has 31 3/8 arm length. So take that for what it's worth. He has had 3 pass breakups this last year, but he's had 12 in his career. Last season, he had a 51.2% catch rates, which means the person he was guarding caught the ball 51.2%. And then he had 6 forced incompletions. So take that for what it's worth for a round 6 pick. And then the final pick, 249 in round 7, I went with Drake Nugent, center from Michigan. And when I looked into him, he's strictly a center. He's good at several aspects of being a center, but not elite at one particular trade. So you could say he's a jack of all trades, master of none regarding the position of center. He's 6'2", 300 pounds. He was a first team all Big 10. He made that. He's a hard hitter. He's got a good anchor. He's relatively strong. So, but he'll definitely need to get stronger for NFL standards. So there'll be a lot of work to get done with that. And he had allowed 1 sack and then only had 2 penalties. And then when I looked at him on PFF and the trends, I noticed that Minnesota was the leading team to want to draft him at 16%, while Green Bay Packers wanted him at 11% and Detroit wanted him at 9%. So he seems to be a popular player among NFC North fans, which makes me want Detroit to get him even more to prevent other NFC North rivals in getting a player that they would want. So, yeah, that's the gist of this NFL draft. Kind of what I think is going to happen. But to sum it up, I think they're going to trade up in the first round to try to draft somebody, and they're probably going to try to trade down at some point, maybe on day 2, to get a little bit more draft capital. And I think uh, they'll address, they don't really like to draft for needs, but they'll draft people who they like, regardless of position. But I do think one of their primary goals is to, you know, make the defensive line unit better, make the edge rusher unit better, and get more pass people who are capable of pass rushing. And I believe that's going to really help out things with the defense quite well. It help the cornerbacks quite well when the quarterback is being pressured as well. Not to mention like the safeties who are trying to get those interceptions, and the great linebacker core that we have now with Anzalone and Jack Campbell and Malcolm Rodriguez and even Germ. And I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. Oh yeah, Derek Barnes. How could I forget about him and his interception to send us to the championship game? Yeah, can't forget about Barnes either. So, anyways, the recap. What I think will most likely happen: the Lions trade up to 17, and they get Byron Murphy, defensive lineman from Texas, and then pick 73 in the 3rd round. They select Cameron Kinchins, safety, Miami, Florida. And then there was a trade down involving the 2nd round pick where the Lions acquire a couple of other 3rd round picks later on and a 5th round pick from the Rams. And then pick 83 in the 3rd round, Jelix Hunt, edge rusher Houston Christian. Pick number 99 in the 3rd round, Brendan Rice, wide receiver from USC. Pick 154 from the 5th round, McKinley Jackson, defensive lineman, Texas A&M. Pick 164 in the 5th round, Will Reichard, kicker from Alabama. Pick 201 from the 6th round, Josh Wallace, cornerback from Michigan. And then pick 249 from the 7th round, Drake Nugent, center from Michigan. So yeah, feel free to critique the draft. Kindly let me know your thoughts and opinions and in the comments. Do you agree with what I think is going to happen? Trade up and draft somebody who can D lineman, or maybe even a edge rusher, somebody who can pass rush really good, and try to collect multiple people who can do that. Feel free to let me know. And also, I'm doing working on a bingo sheet for the NFL draft for when I live stream it Thursday night. So if you have any suggestions for what I should put on that bingo sheet, like for example, like this person will announce the draft pick, or 2 teams will swap back-to-back picks, consecutive picks, or the Tennessee Titans will not draft Joe Alt at pick number 8 or pick number 9, wherever the heck they are. Things like that. If you have any good suggestions, feel free to kindly let me know in the comments. I already have several ideas to put on there, and then I'll reveal that bingo sheet sometime before the draft starts, and you'll see it, and then I'll be updating it there. But yeah, that's it for this, and I will see you guys live for the NFL draft, and it will be subscribers only, the live stream I will do. And until then, always remember, I'm just trying to help.